This is L'Atelier, a yarn store that I used to work at, and this is the store that I'm going to be buying all my yarn from for this project. I'm going to have it all documented, and they're going to have a list, so if there's any particular yarns that you like on the list, you could always feel free to call them, and I'll have their phone number, their 800 number, and their website information in the description box below. When putting together one of these blankets, there's a couple good ways that you could put color combinations together. You could choose colors that you already like together. In this case, I did blues and greens, and I added neutrals. And in this case, I chose pinks and greens and mocha colors with neutrals. Another good way that you can do it is you can go off of existing colorways in variegated skeins. But either way, I choose a couple colors and neutrals, and I start placing them out next to each other, trying to keep the yarn labels from breaking up the colors, touching each other. And I add colors that I think I will like with it. I would rather add more colors and remove colors I don't like later. I try to get some lights, some darks, some neutrals. And then once you start really putting them together, you start the process of elimination, removing the colors that you don't feel quite work with it. Once you're finished with that, then you put them in order that they're going to be knitted in. What I like to do for these projects is I build from the outside and work my way in. So I think these two are very similar in tone and color. Those will be my two ends. And say I want something more neutral. These are very similar. Then from here, these are very similar, but they're different yarns. So you're getting a nice balance. You're getting a nice balance of colors as you work your way in towards the center, but the actual yarns will be different purposely. Those will be different stitches. And I put a focus on trying to get a variety of thick yarns, textured yarns, smooth yarns, ribbons, eyelash, and flagged yarns. Now that you've seen how I put my yarns in order, after you finish putting them in order, either mark the labels 1 through how many ever yarns you have working from one side to the other, so you know what order you're going to knit them in. That does save you a lot of headache later on. Or if you don't have labels on all your yarns, or if you just want to be more organized about it and have a record, you could keep a list in order of what the yarns are that you're going to be using. So I am going to have the yarns I'm using in a list. It's going to be at the end of the document in the description box, but also I'm going to put this on the blog that I use, and there will be a link to the blog too, because sometimes when too many people are accessing the document at the same time, it will kick out additional people. It limits how many people could be looking at one time. So it will be in both my blog and my document just in case. So I really wanted to discuss how we're going to be doing this blanket, because it's not like a typical blanket. You're not going to follow me exactly in the order that I'm showing you. Now, I said that I wanted you to find different types of textures. For instance, this is a ribbon. Now, ribbons look really particularly nice in a stitch called linen stitch. So I'm going to want to do ribbon yarns that I use in a linen stitch. With smooth yarns, you have a lot more variation that looks nice with smooth yarns. You could do anything from stockinette stitch, garter, basket weaves, cables. You get the idea. Ribs. You could do a ton with smooth yarn and it look really nice. With eyelash yarns, you want the yarn to pop through the furry side on your front. So in that case, I use reverse stockinette. Now, none of this is anything that you have to worry about at the moment because we will have tutorials on all of those. I just wanted to show you because your ribbon might not be in the same place in your blanket as my ribbon. So what we do is we have each stitch separate. For instance, mock rib, I say next to it that smooth to slightly textured long yarn looks great with mock rib. And then I have a multiple of 4 plus 3. On our first tutorial, because my first tutorial will be the mock rib, I will explain the multiple of 4 plus 3 and how to figure out how many stitches you need to cast on in order to make the stitch work. Then we'll get right into it, and don't worry, I'll be telling you exactly how many stitches my blanket has, but I want to let you know how it works in case you would rather make a baby blanket or a much larger blanket than I do. I'm just going to do a nice throw. Then I have the instructions. So basically, once we get into doing the blanket, I will add the patterns that I'm doing all one after another. Now, just in case you guys have some smooth yarns or you want to jump ahead, I included 3 extra patterns to begin with, so there's a total of 4 patterns in the very beginning that you have. But I'm not going to necessarily do stockinette, then garter, and reverse. Once I start adding stitches, I will bump them down to wherever I use them in the pattern. And so I will definitely have a guide of what I did first, second, and third, just so you know, in all the written instructions. But for the actual tutorials themselves, it will say the stitch, and it will say what kind of texture the yarn is, just so it's easier for you guys to search later, because this is such a fun blanket and I don't want it to be a headache. But I'm going to do this series, hopefully not broken up by any other projects, and we will start next week. So thank you so much, and I hope that this allows you to get ready. So go ahead and go through your stash, go to a yarn store. If you want any of the particular yarns that you see me use, you could always call L'Atelier, and I have the information in the description box, and I'll have the information also in the document. The blog will be up tomorrow, or the day after I filmed this, so if you're finding it much later, the blog is already there, and it will be available in the description box below as well. So go ahead and gather the yarn you're going to want to be using, and next week we will start with the first yarn and the mock rib. Thanks, guys.